A very good morning to you. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Happy Easter holidays to each and every one of you. We're coming to you live a little bit later than usual, but we're right on time. My name is Jesse Rogers. It's exactly 7 a.m. in the morning. Good morning from wherever you're watching us from. We're here to bring you up to speed with the latest developments. Of course, taking a brief look at the local dailies, the Daily Nation, the Standard, the Business Daily. Of course, most of them covering Raila's big battle with COVID and the secret night meeting that rekindled the bromance, quote unquote, between President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga, of course, just after we saw them yesterday together inspecting projects. A lot of that in the papers, plus much more. We'll definitely keep you updated. Let's just start with the latest on the international pages. First things first, closer home in Uganda, the Daily Monitor, as usual. Or rather, let's start with the Daily Monitor it is. Katongole, the master of public transport system, goes to rest. That's one of the main stories on Daily Monitor. The former chairperson of UTODA died of heart and breathing related challenges at the International Hospital, TMR International Hospital in Kampala. Of course, they must be in mourning. He seemed to be quite an instrumental fella in terms of the public transport system. Let's just take a look at some other stories covered on the Daily Monitor. If you can kindly scroll down. There we go. How families will share wealth when spouse dies. There's a law that's looking at the children of the deceased who are still young and gives them priority. Good news right there, even as they learn their lessons from COVID-19, where the Ministry of Health, despite a poor start, has made progress in dealing with the pandemic and using lessons to prepare for other eventualities. Good news coming right there from Uganda, even as encroachers on railway land are set to leave in 6 months. The Uganda Railways Corporation says it needs the land to revamp its transport network in the country. A little bit of similar situation, what we've seen right here in Kenya, as the railway actually went ahead to remove the encroachers on its land in various tracts of the country, various counties that is. U.S. report stings Uganda on rights abuses. The report accuses security agencies of engaging in arbitrary arrests, torture, and extrajudicial killings. That's the latest from the Daily Monitor. We'll continue monitoring. Let's cross over to the Citizen, the latest from Tanzania. Samia warns against early 2025 campaigns for presidency. Well, she seems to be stamping her authority. A mini cabinet reshuffle. She already picked her vice president, and this time round, she's jolted the political class with a warning against early campaigns. Interesting regards or remarks right there from Madam President, even as she says stop frustrating taxpayers and expand the tax base. Told the taxman through the Ministry of Finance to stop frustrating businesses and instead enable them in one way or the other. Ugandans stuck as Kenya's inter-counties travel ban bites. Well, it seems to be crossing borders in terms of the effects of the inter-county ban on travel. The Kenya's decision to halt the movement of interstate buses across its border following the surge of COVID-19 cases has left several Ugandans stranded. Of course, the 5 red zone counties, Nairobi and the likes, of course, affecting some of the Ugandans who are traveling into the country. One more story, banks opt out of East Africa crude oil pipeline funding. The $3.5 billion East Africa crude oil pipeline project could run into trouble after some international commercial banks withdrew from funding. Sad news right there, but we'll definitely keep our eye on the ground, our finger on the pulse, and that story. Over to the next page, Rwanda Today. Let's take a look at what's happening in our East African country. Partner ticking time bomb as rains set in. Well, lack of land to resettle families frustrates efforts to move them from landslide-prone areas. Of course, in anticipation of the rains that will be coming in a few months, as April is just here, May is around the corner. Alarm as COVID-19 disrupts routine jobs for girls in Rwanda. Some sad news right there as vaccination takes place in schools, but given that they were closed for about 8 months, the exercise was not possible. The ongoing vaccination drive in Africa will definitely continue monitoring that, even as Rwanda is set to roll out the second dose of the COVID-19 jab, where 341,000 people have actually already received their first doses of the vaccine. Look at that number, 341,000 people so far. Well, good news. Rwanda definitely leading by example. Over to the East African. Let's take a look at some of the stories here. Ugandans stranded after Kenya's travel ban. Of course, we highlighted this on the Citizen, which was highlighting some of those people who have been stranded, the internationals, the foreign nationals who have been stranded as they move into the country due to the cessation of movement and the ban into and out of these 5 counties. AU approves Sudan's reform timeline, where representative of the African Union says Khartoum is on track to ensure the country's full return to democracy. Well, this is an interesting one over here. Cameroon, no country for young men. Well, octogenarians, led by the president, have been re-elected to the helm of Cameroon's 2 houses of parliament. Well, not interesting news right there. Let's just take a look at what CNN has to offer in terms of world news. White House meeting with Japan and South Korea to focus on the North Korean policy, even as family of American imprisoned in Russia believes he was targeted over his past military service. The stringent relationships between the superpower countries, of course, will continue to highlight, even with the new administration in the United States. We'll definitely monitor some of the latest developments in the CNN World News. Just taking a look at other stories, the Europe's vaccine rollout unacceptably slow. That's according to World Health Organization, who are warning about that amid a worrying surge of the number of cases of infection. So it's not just Kenya. It's definitely a global phenomenon in terms of dealing with the pandemic. Various challenges seem to arise even in first world countries. So we should bear in mind the efficiency, in one way or the other, of distribution of vaccines, even as Kenyans are encouraged to turn up in large numbers. Na as Waswahili wanasema, usilegeze kamba during this Easter period. Do stay safe and follow the Ministry of Health protocols in order to not just keep you safe, but your family members and your loved ones as well, even as you turn up for vaccination. Okay, let's take a look at what has been highlighted on the local dailies, even as we celebrate the holiday. Of course, the Standard goes big with the Raila story, my big battle with COVID. He was put on oxygen, visibly in high spirits, however, and looking cautious as he made a walkabout town with President Kenyatta. ODM leader Raila Odinga bounced back to the public eye after a 3-week battle with COVID-19. He opened up about his treatment regimen, and that included conventional medicine, herbal mix as well, and steaming. Well, it's good to see the former Prime Minister up and running. And the Daily Nation, of course, have a picture of the head of state with the ODM leader, Raila Odinga. And their headline goes, Secret Night Meeting Rekindles Bromance. Interesting moves politically as the BBI principals move to rein in hardliners, getting reggae back on course. Of course, we'll get to discuss a little bit more about this. Already joining me in studio, quite early, I must say, on a holiday, Professor Gitile Naituli. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to you, and happy Easter to your viewers.
Well, that's great. And I mean, it must be a happy Easter, especially for the hard supporters of President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga. To the proponents of the handshake, this was a stamp of authority in one way or the other, that reggae is still on course and that the handshake is still going strong, irrespective of the few voices we had over the week. What's your reaction to this?
I join them in celebrating the recovery of Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga's record in the Kenyan democratization process, it speaks for itself. Is a national hero in some way, and therefore getting him back on feet and also getting him back on the national stage, I think, was a relief to many, because because Baba, whether we like his policy or not, he has been very good for this country.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely continue monitoring this state of affairs, even as we try and look for a story that ran yesterday that sort of highlighted the bromance between these two leaders on the status of the handshake and, of course, the COVID-19 measures. I'd like your quick reaction before we delve deeper into this. President Uhuru Kenyatta did go live yesterday, was quite vocal that the lockdown is within 5 counties. So the tax measures that were put in place early last year cannot be effected in one way or the other. He was sort of putting focus on the counties to do more in terms of alleviating the suffering of the common mwananchi. Mentioned Nakuru during his speech and what they've done to help the small-scale traders. Talk to us about this. What's your reaction?
I don't know what the counties can really do. I'm concerned that we seem to make policy without regard to the most vulnerable sector of the society. Government exists actually not to take care of those who can take care of themselves, but to take care of the most vulnerable. Now, when you look at the operations, basically, which are affected by this decision, which is a good decision. Nobody says it's not a good decision.
True. But
the argument is it could have been done better. There's the people involved here. If you look at our bars and our restaurants, 90%, and I dare say over 90% of the people who work there are single mothers. They earn between 200 and 300 per day. These people are paid only and only if they have worked for that day. Meaning that the moment the shutdown happened, these people lost that income. Now, the government ought to have measures to cushion these people over this period, because the other time they really suffered. This time they are now suffering. I think the prudent way to have done this thing is heightened and uncompromising enforcement of Ministry of Health protocols. And then move the curfew back to 10, close bars at 8, close restaurants at 9, and allow these people to be able to work. I think this would have still gotten the same impact, reduce infections, and still take care of this vulnerable sector of our society.
Well, the Standard on page 6 actually goes big with that story, Uhuru dashing hopes on tax relief measures to cushion the 5 counties. But also, they mentioned the Uhuru-Raila night talks that sort of calmed fears over the handshake crisis. Professor, before I get your reaction to this, let's just take a look at a story that ran yesterday on the 3-hour secret meeting between President Uhuru Kenyatta and the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga on Wednesday night, followed by a day-long inspection tour of government projects by the door. Appears to have sort of lowered tension and speculation over the handshake and the Building Bridges initiative. Although the two handshake principals avoided commenting on politics, their body language and Odinga's resolve to support government projects might be the clearest indication yet to their supporters that all is well. Chris Tyro had this report. Let's take a look.
It was the first time that President Uhuru Kenyatta and the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga were meeting and spending time together amid fears that the handshake and by extension the BBI process was collapsing. This after some of their top supporters hinted that all was not well.
Harambee House and all government institutions which are subject to civilian authority should keep away from the question of determining the political leadership that will arise in the year 2022.
We want to remind them that where we were in 2018, as of February, Nyasachiel wanyalo kanyo anytime katasani.
Sources say President Uhuru Kenyatta drove into Raila Odinga's current home on Wednesday evening for a meeting that lasted 3 hours. A meeting viewed by many as efforts to rescue constitutional reforms process after Parliament calendar was altered, allowing MPs to go for a 1-month recess.
Na ninafurahi kuwa pamoja na ndugu yangu. Nilimpigia leo asubuhi nikamwambia tunaenda shughuli za kuangalia miradi ya maendeleo. Na yeye pia akasema wacha nikuje tutembee pamoja na tuangalie vile dunia inaendelea.
na mimi nataka kutoa shukrani kwa ndugu yangu kuja kunialika nyumbani nitoke nje ili Wakenya waweze kuona sura yangu. Manake sasa kwa wiki 3 imekuwa hali ya mahututi, lakini sasa nimetoka.
The night meeting culminated in a tour of the Green Park bus terminal in Nairobi County, where the two leaders were keen to show unity and assure their supporters that the handshake was solid.
Hongera kwa, tunaona bado nguvu iko mingi. Mungu ni mwema na tunamshukuru. Ndugu yangu,
wacha kwanza nichukue fursa hii kutoa shukrani sana kwa ndugu yangu Rais Uhuru Kenyatta ambaye amekuja akanitoa kwa kitanda akaniambia nitoke. Vile hii mnajua, kwa wiki 3 sasa nimekuwa mimi naugua ugonjwa wa corona.
There have been fears by Raila supporters that their man was being played and was to be thrown under the bus, especially after the formation of One Kenya Alliance, bringing together Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, Moses Wetangula and Gideon Moi. Matters were made worse when the two principals failed to mark the 3rd anniversary of the handshake, where leaders were to hold a consultative meeting.
Na tutaendelea kusaidiana na Wakenya, tutaendelea kusaidiana tuhakikishe hizi jukumu ambazo tuko nazo zinaendelea na ziendelee, tukikinga afya yetu, tukikinga maisha yetu na tukikinga maisha ya wale ambao tunapenda.
Na nimefuraha kuona kazi muhimu ambayo inaendelea kule. Tumetoka kule kwa bus park na sasa tumekuja kwa hii barabara. Unavyojua miradi ya barabara zimekuwa sana katika roho yangu.
The meeting between the two also came into the wake of fresh calls by the ODM to have the speakers of both houses of parliament to call for a special sitting and debate the BBI Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. Chris Dairo, KTN News.
Well, that report filed by Chris Thairo just highlights the busy day the two leaders had just yesterday. And of course, in one or the other, the political undertone towards it, Professor, is that they were allaying fears around the BBI agenda. We well know that Parliament did take a sort of 1-month break from actually holding sittings within the two houses. Talk to us about the BBI journey. Earlier on, Oparanya did have his sentiments as the deputy ODM party leader, but the party leader has spoken. What does this mean for the BBI process, according to you?
I think the BBI hiccups is not going to go away just because the president and his brother Raila Odinga get together and they rekindle their love affair. Because some people have doubts. Jealousies have come, started filtering in on the BBI. I've heard them talk about, oh, we are giving these people 40 seats and all that kind of language. So I think, politically speaking, the BBI cover will continue. And the other thing, though, more important, is there is really no time to run a referendum and run a general election. That will look, I don't know how it will look to the public. It may look fairly mean by the leaders to the eyes of the public. But again, I think these people need to sit down and figure out what in BBI which can be legislated and allow the parliament to legislate in this setting. When they reopen. Because a referendum, 15 months or whatever, to the general election. Referendum is a general election. And then you have another general election. It's not going to look interesting. But I was also looking something in the newspaper. 20 billion annually will be needed after BBI passes. Now, given our economic situation, I'm not sure if that is tenable. So maybe we should grab in the BBI what is good, and there's a lot of things which are good there, and then decide to differ other things until maybe we even audit the current constitution to see which areas the money can be saved.
Okay, you seem to echo the words of Wycliffe Oparanya in terms of timeliness, which was poking holes into it. and perhaps urging for redistribution of funds to fight COVID instead of pushing for the BBI process. But be that as it may, what make you of the statement by Raila Odinga that he will be in the ballot come 2022? ODM, 3 candidates, Ali Hassan Joho, Mombasa Governor, Wycliffe Oparanya, the Deputy Party Leader, and Kakamega Governor as well. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, Raila was bound to be in the race, but honestly, if I were to advise the former Prime Minister, this probably is time to go home.
But why is that? He's a politician.
We need him. He has been absolutely indispensable in the Kenyan democratic process.
True.
I don't think anyone can run a candle in front of Raila on that, but I think his time is coming up. What I'm foreseeing, given the economic challenges, given the COVID challenges, the person in this country is going to elect a president is not a current competitor, is not a politician.
Okay.
Those individuals have not even declared that they are running.
Well, a couple have declared.
Not that I know them, I don't. I'm just know that as a Kenyan myself, I'm looking for a non-politician, non-corrupt, clean Kenyan, and not somebody else who has been in the scene for way too long.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking for. That's what I think other Kenyans are looking for. And those Kenyans are going to come out. And when you come out, this country has changed. They will get traction, and we probably will manufacture another Kibaki.
Well, someone else might say that's a piped dream, bearing in mind the nature of politics in the country. But we'll see how it plays out, even as we focus on the latest political moves in the country. That has been covered extensively in the papers, so make sure you grab yourself a copy. But yet another issue that definitely is touching quite close to the Kenyan homesteads is on the confinement measures during this Easter period. Even as the country prepares to celebrate yet another unique Easter weekend, altered largely by the coronavirus pandemic, the hardest hit sectors are churning out innovative ways of coping with the shortfall brought about by last week's containment measures announced by the president. KTN News' Timothy Otieno surveys the impact of the partial lockdown on key institutions as Kenyans back the religious holiday. Take a look.
The very Reverend Canon Sami Wainaina, the provost at the All Saints Cathedral in Nairobi, prepares for yet another unique Easter weekend. For the second year running, his church, alongside many other religious institutions within the 5-county red zone, will be marking Easter virtually.
Good Friday tomorrow, we are going to have a service here at 10, but it is live on YouTube and Facebook.
It's an adjustment that his peers agree has drastically altered the manner in which Easter is conducted, even though the tenets remain largely the same.
There are many things we used to do and we normally do, which we are not going to have during this period. We will not have the way of the cross, we will not have the washing of the feet, we will not have the vigil night. But that doesn't mean we are going to have less mystery of Christ and powerful resurrection. We in our hearts can bear all that great things that we would have wished to have and show externally, and still celebrate and benefit from this great mystery of Christ who dies for our sins and rises from the dead.
The church is one among several facets of society hardest hit by a raft of measures announced by President Uhuru Kenyatta a week ago to try and contain the spread of COVID-19 in the country. Yet another is the hotel industry, which has lost nearly 50,000 jobs over the last 1 year. At the Villa Rosa Kempinski, for instance, Easter events have had to be cancelled as the hotel tries to cope with a raging pandemic and stiff government directives targeting hotels, bars and restaurants.
This has affected us a lot in terms of business being cancelled, us giving back refund, both local and international. The clients are asking for refund because there's uncertainty. We don't know until when. Hoteliers and tour companies have decried the recent directives, terming them as punitive and meant to kill an already struggling sector.
Bwana Simon, first and foremost, thank you so much for speaking to KTN News.
But the CEO of Bonfire Adventures believes there is still hope for the sector if they can get the necessary support.
Please, instead of cancelling, not only for Bonfire Adventures, for every tour and travel company, please, not only for us, please don't cancel your safari or your holiday, please postpone it. That will work a long way to support the hospitality industry, including the hotels.
A majority of Kenyans, especially those in the counties of Nairobi, Nakuru, Kajiado, Machakos and Kiambu, are set to mark yet another Easter weekend with the threat of the pandemic looming large.
The National Police Service will continue to enforce the cessation of movement into and out of the zoned area.
Stakeholders in the most affected areas are, however, keeping their heads high.
It's really bad. It's really bad. Yeah.
Despite the unusual times. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
All right, so that seems to be the latest. These affected sectors are sort of adapting to the new way of life. Of course, with the latest containment measures imposed last week Friday by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And of course, he did mention, as he was sympathizing with these sectors, the hospitality sector, the education sector, which has been affected one way or the other, bars and businesses that actually depend on personal face-to-face interactions. So let's take a short break right now, Professor. When we come back, I'd like your take on this, because the president was quite categorical in terms of not bringing back the tax relief measures to cushion these 5 counties, saying it's not a nationwide lockdown. But many might argue the GDP that these 5 counties actually contribute is quite substantial. So we'll explore that after this short break. Do stay with us. You're watching Morning Express.